Hey Elsa, how are you?
I'm good. How about yourself?
I'm doing fine, thank you. Welcome, viewers, friends, clients of JLW Immigration Law Group. I am Jennifer Walker Gates, immigration attorney, and I'm here today with our beautiful associate attorney, Elsa Guerra, also an immigration attorney. And we're here today to talk about travel inside the United States. We'll also be talking about travel outside the United States, all things travel today. This has been a question that's been coming up a lot lately, and it's really important for people to understand the risks and benefits of traveling, whether they have a case pending, whether they have already a visa or lawful status and travel authorization, whether they have no status. Um, all of those kinds of situations are important to touch on because travel is something that's really important in the United States for whether you're doing it for work, for with your family, whatever the situation. It's a huge country, and so I look forward to talking about that today with you, Elsa.
Yes, it's a topic that definitely affects, if not everybody, a lot of people. A lot of
For sure.
traveling to different cities, different states, international travel for residents. Yeah, very important to
Yes.
talk about.
Yeah. So before we get into the topic, I'd like to just take a moment and ask people to please subscribe to our channel. Share, subscribe, and comment. So this is information that we are going to be sharing today to try to make sure that everyone has reliable, trustworthy information and resources to make decisions about your own case. Please share it with anyone you think it could help. Please subscribe to our channel. We're here every Wednesday at noon, answering questions live, talking about topics that are important to the immigrant community. We want to make sure that you don't miss out. So please subscribe to the channel. That also helps us get it out. And leave us a comment if you have any questions. Please drop them in the comments of this video, whether you're watching on YouTube or Facebook. Drop us a comment. We're happy to respond as best we can.
In English and in Spanish.
Sí, es cierto. En inglés y en español
In Spanish.
hablamos los dos.
Mhm.
Hi from Miami. Hi, good to see
Ooh.
you. Another really quick reminder is we are just taking a little bit of extra precaution right now with calling people's names out, calling people's social media handles out, just because that is it's just one more tiny precaution we can take to make sure that people's information is remaining confidential. As attorneys, we just really love confidentiality, and we want to make sure everyone is staying safe online. So in that spirit, please make your questions very general as and hypothetical in nature. If you can, don't say anything specific about your own case, and make your questions as broad and applicable to as many people as you can. Likewise, the information that we're going to give y'all is going to be really broad and generalized, because we can't give specific advice in this forum, but we will give you good legal information. So, Elsa, what are you telling your clients these days about traveling inside the U.S. if let's say they have a case pending, you're working on them to get maybe their waiver is pending and their residency isn't finished yet. They're just waiting for their waiver. We have a lot of clients in that situation. What are you telling them these days about traveling inside the United States?
Right. I think right now, given the current state of the political situation, it's important, or if it's possible, to wait and go ahead and wait for that approval. Is that what you're telling your clients, Jen?
Yes, definitely. I I'm telling them, obviously I don't tell my clients like what decisions to make, but my job really is to just kind of let people know what I see as the risk and benefits. And so um, I think the risk right now is that there's more enforcement happening. There are more checkpoints. There is a greater likelihood of local police turning people over to ICE and having them detained by ICE, even if they get stopped for something really minor, like a little taillight issue or something like that. Um, those risks are greater now. And so the more you're sort of out traveling around, the more exposure to that risk there is. Um,
What did
and,
you see? Oh, sorry, I apologize.
oh, no, it's okay. Yeah, so I'm just letting people know that those risks are higher now than they were before. And so to the extent that a staycation is an art that one can develop, I'm encouraging people to think about that.
Right, that's
Yeah.
very true. Did you experience, was this something that happened during the last time that this administration was in office?
Yes, for sure. I did have clients during the last administration, several clients who traveled to even at that time, the state of Florida was just beginning to put into place some of their more restrictive measures against like having people undocumented people in your car even and things like that. And I had several clients that went to Disney World with their families, and their cases were pending. They're mixed status families. Some of them have citizenship. Some of them have maybe DACA. Some of them don't have anything yet. They're waiting. They're in process. And I really discouraged people from doing that because of I just really explained the risks. And some of my clients chose to go ahead and go. It meant a lot to them. It meant a lot to their family. It meant a lot to their children. And they felt like they could deal with the risks. They just didn't have people driving if they didn't have a license. They just managed the driving that way and mitigated the risks that way, and they were fine. And then I knew of, I had colleagues whose clients weren't so lucky, and we had a lot of clients who were detained while traveling for work, for driving long distances to job sites and work and things like that. We had a lot of new cases come in during the Trump administration, the first one, from folks who had been pulled over in all around the state of Texas, all over the United States, while they were on their way to work. So it definitely is a risk, and it is sometimes one, like if that's where your work is taking you, sometimes that risk cannot easily be avoided. So in those cases, it is extra, extra important to have an emergency plan in place to understand this can happen. I am going to travel for this job. However, I could be detained. If I'm detained, here's what I'm going to do. Here's who I'm going to call. Here's who they're going to call. Here's the attorney we're going to use. Here's the evidence I'm going to show to the officers that detain me, so that I have given my attorney the best. And here's what I'm not going to show. Right? Here's what I'm going to say, and here's what I'm not going to say. So I've given my future attorney the best chance with my case. Um, that's really, I think, critically important for folks who do need to travel right now.
Yeah, I agree. Is there something in particular that those people with pending applications maybe should carry with them, you think, to avoid, or maybe not to avoid, but to prove that they are in that not proceeding, but with the application pending?
Yeah, I do think it is like what we're seeing right now is that in many cases, not all, but in some cases, when people have an application pending, if they've, especially if they've been in the United States for a long time, those are the two most important factors to be able to show for anyone who is waiting on a case right now and doesn't have anything final. You need to show that you've been in the United States longer than 2 years, and you need to be able to show that you are legitimately in the process. So if you have receipt notices for your case, those are really good to carry. The other thing that I think is really helpful to carry for people who don't yet have their status all the way completed and legalized, they need to be able to show maybe some old tax returns showing that they've been filing taxes, maybe kids' birth certificates showing they've been, around for a while. Um, People who are brand new in the United States are really being targeted right now for removal. the expedited removal provisions in the Immigration Nationality Act say that if you can't show that you've been here for at least 2 years, you're subject to being removed without even getting to see a judge.
Right.
And that is, DHS is really using that provision right now to apply to as many people as possible. So if you are, you know, if you've been here longer, you stand a better chance of potentially getting bond, from getting out of immigration detention, fighting a case in the court, um, being able to manage a removal hearing and a detention situation. But again, it's really important to understand exactly kind of like what is likely to happen in your case if you are detained while traveling.
Absolutely. I think just to not maybe not clarify, but a lot of people probably don't know that the receipt notice is just a document from USCIS that says that you filed and that they have your application. So it's such a good idea to just have that somewhere accessible in your vehicle, um, just potentially to show that you have applied.
Yes, yes, that's right. Thank you for clarifying. Yes, receipt notices are documents that come from USCIS to say, we got your money, we got your case. Um, they often say this is not an immigration benefit, this is an immigration status, and that's true. But it is something to show that you're in process. So they can be even just pictures on your phone could be, helpful in my experience. If you need to be able to show that you are working on it, right? That you're trying to get lawful status.
Yes, screenshots. I
So,
didn't think of that, but that's a really good idea to have it on you all at all times. Take a picture of the document.
yeah, yeah. If people can make a little folder on their phone with the photos of their most important documents, that's not a bad idea. Um, the other, I think, the other important thing for people to know is that if they do have authorization to travel outside the United States, then they certainly have travel authorization inside the US as well. However, there has been some news lately about people who had visas, who had residency, who had not so much advanced parole. We haven't heard horror stories about, I mean, all the stories I've been hearing about advanced parole travel have been positive and fine. The tough ones have been for people who have been participating in protests against either the war in Gaza, maybe the war in Ukraine, and suddenly the political situation in the United States has changed and is very different and is really coming down hard on those people. Um, we are in a moment that's a little different than we've seen in the US in a really long time, if ever, where things that you have posted on social media, things that you have shared via text, those things can be observed and checked out while you're traveling internationally. And so the folks who have been targeted have had their phones searched at international ports of entry, at airports, and or they've been identified and then had DHS actually go directly to their house. So for traveling internationally right now, I think it's really just important to sort of think about what's on your devices from the perspective of this current administration and the officers that represent the administration at the border. What are they going to be thinking if they see the content of your social media posts or whatever and just assume it's going to get searched?
Yeah.
And hopefully it won't. Most people still don't, to be honest. But if it does, are you comfortable with the content that's there? And if not, do you need to clean that up and like make some um, better decisions maybe about what you're posting right now, or more careful decisions about what you're posting right now? Not better, but more careful.
Yes, I think that's beautifully said. Also, for those that have been residents for, the amount of time that is required for your citizenship, depending on your circumstance, I we highly recommend that you start that process as soon as possible. Um, Very
Definitely,
important.
definitely agree. That is a really great point. Once you are a US citizen, you can also apply for global entry. And that also removes a lot of potential suspicion and barriers for people who are traveling internationally, and can really facilitate. I mean, it cuts way down on lines, and it really it gets you through a lot of vetting and pre-screening, so that when you're actually going through that border, they don't feel like they need to vet you and pre-screen you again. So that's a great point, Elsa. People who do naturalize as U.S. citizens can then qualify for that benefit also. So let's see. What about Elsa? What about traveling inside the United States when you do have lawful status? We talked about people who don't have lawful status yet, and kind of steps they need to take. What about people who do have like a visa, or they have DACA, or they have, um, their work permit, and they're traveling not internationally, but around the U.S.? What kind of recommendations are you making for them right now?
In theory, I think that what we've seen up until this point is that they are safe to travel. But like I said, but like you said, and you explained very well, that the political climate, things are changing. It is getting a little riskier to travel even within the United States. I don't think I've seen anything about domestic traveling in regards to immigration, but I might be missing something. Have you seen something?
Um, Not really. However, um, the I think that the key point for those folks is that um, I think everyone just kind of needs to expect a little more scrutiny than usual than
Mhm.
before. So if you are traveling um, far away from the border, it's less likely there's going to be a checkpoint, an immigration check, or anything like that. If you're traveling along in the border states, Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, California, there are lots of immigration checkpoints in those states.
Mhm.
And technically, immigration has authority to set up additional checkpoints around international airports. They certainly have them within international airports, but technically, like within 100 miles of an international airport, they could ostensibly set up
Mm.
checkpoints. So, as we travel, I think, it could come to pass that all of us are having to deal more with that. And so we just need to, again, think about, do I have my documentation in order when I'm going out and about? Do I have something to show that I have lawful status already? Is there anything on me or in my belongings that, from their point of view, makes me seem risky in some way? And, just kind of think those things through before going out on long trips.
Yeah, good point. I also want to add, I may go without saying, but any criminal history, even if you are a resident, can be flagged. So it's really important to think of that.
Yes, that is a really, really good point. Um, Even if you have not ever had a problem with a criminal past, like if you have, let's say, I've seen this happen before. You're a permanent resident and you've been a permanent resident for 10 years, and 7 years ago, you got a little possession of marijuana. Even if you've never had a problem with that little conviction can subject you to mandatory detention if immigration decides to detain you. And so it's just important to kind of think about that stuff, deal with that stuff at this time, like now. Don't put it off anymore. Go see an immigration attorney, figure out what needs to happen to resolve those kinds of issues, or to be able to make a very clear plan for in case of emergency.
Yeah.
That would be my recommendation. All right, we have some questions. So, thank you for your time and sharing your knowledge. Much appreciated. You are very welcome. Thank you for being here. Two questions. What's the average fee one should pay for legal representation for naturalization? for a permanent resident with 10, 20, or 30 plus years since issued, and um, on the 6 month outside the country rule, is that per trip or collective dates? Ooh, those are really good questions. Um, do you want to take one of those, Elsa?
I will take the 6 month rule. It
Yeah.
is cumulatively, right? Correct?
Yeah.
It's per year. So they just want to verify. That's kind of why they ask you for all of your exit and entry dates to verify that you haven't lived outside of the United States for more than 6 months, since that's disqualifying.
Yes. So this is also, I think, this person brings up another really important point, that people who are permanent residents who are traveling internationally, if immigration is concerned about the amount of time you've spent outside the US, they might hand you a form, it's Form I-407. And that is basically a declaration that one has abandoned one's permanent residence. Um, as an attorney, we would never recommend someone sign that unless they just want to abandon their residence. If you're very clear that that's what you want to do, um, the the law around maintaining continuous residence in the United States is subject to a lot of factors. There's a lot of analysis that has to be done to understand whether someone has truly abandoned their
Mhm.
residency or not. And it really has more than anything to do with one's own intention. So it's important um, to consult with an attorney before signing one of those I-407s. That means that you might get put into removal proceedings. If you don't want to sign the I-407, the officers at the border can say, okay, well, then you're going to go see a judge because we are thinking that you have actually abandoned your residency. And if you really want to avoid that situation, it's really important to maintain at least half of your life in the US, have a place to live, have, financial activity happening, maybe insurance, bank account activity. You're filing taxes in the United States. You need to be able to demonstrate that, like, you really do want to continue to be part of the United States and that you're not using your residency like a tourist visa where you just come for a minute and then leave again. Now, some circumstances require people to be outside the United States for longer periods of time, and there is a way to request what's called a re-entry permit in those situations, and that is on Form I-131, re-entry permits. Those are issued, I think, for up to 2 years at a time if you need to be outside the US for longer than a year at a time. But even if you are able to travel in more frequently, if you know you have to be out for a while, then having that reentry permit can help protect your residency from a finding of abandonment. So that's an important thing to just keep in mind. Don't sign the I-407 without talking to your attorney. And if you need to be gone a lot, reentry permit is a good idea. Now, with respect to average fees for legal representation, um, it's a really great question, but it's so hard to give you any kind of real clarity. I think it depends so much on where the attorney is practicing, what kind of office they have. Is it a big firm? Is it a small firm? Um, is it and then what's involved in the case? You know, I've done lots of naturalization cases for people with lots of different periods of resident status. And sometimes they've been a resident for a very long time because they have some issue that prevented them from feeling comfortable applying for naturalization. And that's going to make the case more complicated. So we have to charge more. Um, Sometimes there are no issues and it's a relatively smooth case. And the fees can be very different because it just depends on the amount of time that it's going to take to get that person successfully over the finish line, and the amount of risk, the amount of liability for the attorney, and things like that. So I'm sorry that I can't give you a clearer, more succinct answer. what I would recommend probably for anyone who's interested in applying for naturalization with an attorney is to maybe say, okay, I'm going to interview 3 different ones based on friends' recommendations, Google reviews, whatever, and then make a decision based on those interviews, like who helps you feel comfortable. If you need someone to work with you on the financial part, who offers the payment plans, who is willing to explain the law to you and your probabilities of being successful, um, you know, those kinds of factors are the ones that I think best inform what kind of attorney you should work with.
That's a really good point. I think also, I mean, discuss with your attorney whether you would like to include representation at the actual exam the day of the interview. Some people feel a lot more comfortable, and we do encourage that you take an attorney, especially now that things are changing and it's a little bit more, they're a little more strict with the applications that are being submitted. So a lot of variables go into those prices.
That's right. Yes, that's a really good point as well. The fees that we charge for naturalization always include that interview because I'm not really interested in taking cases at USCIS that include interviews where we don't attend, because that's the highest stakes moment of the case. And it's the moment I feel when people most need an advocate. And so I know some attorneys feel very differently about that. And some clients are also very comfortable going without an attorney. Um, what I have seen in my 20 years of practice is that the vast majority of USCIS officers are respectful and professional and follow the law. And then I have seen a few on different occasions who were either having a really bad day, or they were simply people who felt entitled to bully clients. Like, an immigration officer in that moment has a lot of power, and people need to be trustworthy to manage that level of power, with respect, and allowing the other person to have a lot of dignity. And if that officer is one who enjoys kind of abusing power, it is an opportunity for them to do it. And so for that reason, we just stopped doing cases without attending those interviews with our clients. So that is my recommendation always, is when you do go to an interview, it's a really good idea to take an attorney, just because when someone else is there to bear witness to what's happening, it doesn't mean the officer, believe me, plenty of officers have been rude to my clients right in front of me. And doesn't mean always the officer will be super nice, but having another person present taking notes, who can say, hey, we need a supervisor, or we want to request a reschedule of this interview, or whatever the case may be, is invaluable if you happen to get unlucky with the officer that is handling your case that day.
Absolutely. I agree. Even just to re-clarify questions, I know that some people get a little nervous or a little anxious when they're in the interview room and don't want to ask those questions. And who better than an attorney to ask them to clarify or ask the question in a different way?
Absolutely. Yes. I've been in fact, recent interviews, and this has happened so many times, where I hear the officer ask a question, I hear my client answer, and it's clear my client misunderstood the question,
Absolutely.
because they didn't answer it in the way that I expected, knowing the facts of the case the way I do. So I can say, wait, can we go back to that question?
Hmm.
Wait, can you ask that question again?
Right.
Um, and that is because my client wasn't even aware that they answered incorrectly.
Hmm.
They heard a different question than what was asked. So yeah, it is super valuable. And in fact, Elsa, what we should do one of these days, we should do a little mock interview
Oh,
where
that's actually a good idea.
you should be the USCIS officer, and I'll be the applicant for maybe naturalization. And
Sounds like fun.
Yeah, we should do that so that people have a sense of what that's like and what to expect.
Super good idea. I don't know if you've experienced this, but sometimes my clients will tell me that they've seen a YouTube video where they, do the most extreme things and they get really worried. So maybe it would be nice to do a more realistic one so that they can be better prepared or
Yeah,
know what to expect. Yeah.
that is a great, yes, that's a great idea. I'm so glad that our answers are helpful. I'm so glad. And yes, I see that you agree. A mock interview would be fantastic. So let's put that on the agenda, Elsa, and get that done one of these days coming up. Um, Again, I'm going to ask everyone to please share, like, comment, subscribe, and join us again next Wednesday at noon. We are going to be here with important updates for the immigrant community. I want y'all to stay safe in the meantime, and Elsa does also. Do you have anything else you want to add before we just sign off for today, Elsa?
No, I think you did a really good job at explaining today's topic. Our phone number is at the bottom of the screen. Please call, make a consultation, and we look forward to seeing you guys very soon.
Yes, that is a really good point. Don't just subscribe to our channel. If you need help with your case, please call us, 526-331-1785, or go to our website. You can schedule an appointment with me or an appointment with Elsa or any of the other attorneys in our firm on our website very easily. We look forward to helping everyone here. So have a great week. And next Wednesday at noon, we'll be back. Take care.
Bye. Yes,
Bye.
bye.